2004 was an amazing year for movies. 2004 brought us movies like The Notebook, Spider-Man 2, Shrek 2, Dodgeball, Napoleon Dynamite, another Harry Potter movie, $1 Million Baby, Ray, The Passion of the Christ, and one of my favorites, I, Robot, starring Will Smith. In this movie, Will Smith's character, Spooner, talks to this lady scientist about a rogue robot. At one point, she tells Spooner, a robot could not commit murder, no more than a human could walk on water. Spooner replies, well, you know, there was this one guy, a long time ago. Hello world, my name is David Dorn and this is Preposterous, which is not your typical Bible study. What Jesus says and does is preposterous. The translation for preposterous in Spanish is absurdo. It's absurd by society standards what Jesus does, says, and calls us to do. Now, while you and me will probably never walk on water, although Jesus did and called Peter to do the same, God calls us frequently to step outside our comfort zones and rely on Him. So do we take an uncertain step or do we stay safe, guarding ourselves from the very thing God uses to change us? Check this out. Right then, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead to the other side of the lake while He dismissed the crowds. When He sent them away, He went up onto a mountain by Himself to pray. Evening came and He was alone. Meanwhile, the boat, fighting a strong headwind, was being battered by the waves and was already far away from land. Very early in the morning, He came to His disciples, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw Him walking on the lake, they were terrified and said, "It's a ghost!" They were so frightened they screamed. Just then, Jesus spoke to them. "Be encouraged. It's me. Don't be afraid." Peter replied, "Lord, if it's you, order me to come to you on the water." And Jesus said, "Come." Then Peter got out of the boat and was walking on the water toward Jesus. But when Peter saw the strong wind, he became frightened. As he began to sink, he shouted, "Lord, rescue me!" Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him, saying, "You man of weak faith, why did you begin to have doubts?" When they got into the boat, the wind settled down. Then those in the boat worshiped Jesus and said, "You must be God's Son." Now, can I just point out the Bible says the disciples were so scared of Jesus coming toward them, they screamed. Another important thing to notice, Jesus just finished feeding 5,000 plus people using a little boy's lunch and then teaching them. So after all of that, Jesus sent the disciples on ahead so He could spend some time alone in prayer. When's the last time you spent time alone in prayer? Jesus recognized His need to recharge and reconnect with God. Yes, Jesus is God, but even Jesus needed time alone. Now, have you ever been alone in your house or maybe somebody else's house alone at night? Every creak takes on a sound of an intruder. Every shadow takes the shape of a threat. I remember this one time I house sat for my sister. I was staying up late playing Halo and the electricity went out. Now our house is out in the country with few neighbors around, and I was just playing a game about alien invaders, so I was a little jumpy. With no flashlight, I went for the only thing that made sense. My brother-in-law's airsoft gun. I figured if somebody cut the power and was trying to get into the house, at least they might catch the shadow of my veiled threat. After checking all the doors and locks, a few minutes went by. Then I called my mother asking what should I do. Turns out the power company scheduled maintenance and my sister forgot to warn me. I felt stupid. I tell you this because it's easy to get freaked out. The disciples screamed when they thought they saw a ghost walking on the water. I bet you if they possessed an airsoft gun, they would have pointed it at Jesus. Jesus speaks peace to the disciples. In the midst of the storm and in the midst of their terror, Jesus speaks peace. This idea easily gets overlooked, but this idea will change your life. Jesus speaks peace to you in the midst of your anxiety. Are you listening? Peter, Mr. Type A personality, calls out, "Lord, if it's you, order me to come to you on the water." And Jesus said, "Come." God calls us out of our comfort zones. Despite the boat almost sinking, the other 11 disciples were fine where they were because stepping out into the unknown terrified them more than the danger that they knew. Peter walked on water. He did the unimaginable, at least as long as he kept his eyes trained on Jesus. The moment Peter began noticing the waves and the wind and lightning, it began to sink. This professional fisherman began to drown. "Lord, rescue me," he cried out. And Jesus did rescue him. "You man of weak faith, why did you begin to have doubts?" Jesus said. Jesus is talking to Peter, but don't you think he meant it for the other 11 too? Peter stepped out and failed. The other 11 never tried. What has God called you to lately that is outside your comfort zone? When I say called you to, I'm talking about that nagging feeling you get when God leads you and you resist. Recently, my daughter's youth group was going to minister at a homeless shelter. I had that nagging feeling. God said go, and I said I'll sign up for it later. Well, later came, and it was too late. I felt like I did my part until my daughter asked me if we could still go. I knew I could still get us in, so I had to make a decision. Do I stay comfortable in my bed or get up and go serve in a homeless shelter with people I don't know how to interact with? Well, we went, and I saw God in that place, and it was awesome, and my daughter got to see it too. What has God called you to lately? Did you listen, or did you stuff that feeling down? Leave your thoughts in a comment or a video response. May we be people who live our lives in faith, so that unless God shows up, we're going to drown. Jesus said and did some absurd things, and I'm okay with that because it's in those things that we are changed. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed Preposterous, make sure you like this video and share it on Facebook with your friends. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to us here on YouTube, and you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. As always, if you have any questions for me, you can tweet me at @IamPreposterous. And if you're a small group leader and would like to use Preposterous for your small group, you can sign up on our website at preposterousproject.com. God bless. Ah!